Hey everybody, sorry I'm a few minutes late. I was having some little technical issues, but I'm glad to see everybody. What's today? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Yay! Finally, right? So we are here to do a part 2 recap of Sins of Our Mother, now streaming on Netflix. And I think we should just get right into it. So this opens up, the second episode opens up with Colby Ryan, sorry, I messed up because we went 15 minutes into the second episode last time. So we'll just recap. It opens up with Alex Cox, the 911 call after the murder of Charles Vallow. He calls 911. He's asked to do compressions. He's acting like he's doing them. Then the police are there. He's told to leave the house with his hands empty. He does not. He has a cell phone in his hand. I don't know why he wasn't just shot on sight. Probably would have been the best thing that could have ever happened. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So he's sitting on the curb and he is recapping the events according to him. So he says that Charles came to pick up his son. He got into a fight with Lori, that Tylee went and got a baseball bat. Charles grabbed the bat from Tylee. Alex was in between the two of them. At some point, Tylee and Lori and JJ leave the house. Charles hits Alex with a baseball bat, and Alex goes into his room, grabs a gun, and shoots Charles in self-defense. So there's that. And we've talked about this before, but I'm going to go back to something that one of the creators of this docuseries said, why didn't anybody step in? This could have been stopped. I agree with her in that, but I'm also going to say, in Charles's defense, I mean, he wrote emails to everybody. He had contacted the police earlier. He had told law enforcement that his wife was threatening him. He had proof of her antics, the stealing of the car, the clearing out of the bank account, all of that. I don't think you can say that everybody sat by idly, but here we are. So then Lori and Tylee return to the house. They do show some footage of Lori going through the Burger King drive-thru for JJ. That was something that she did every time she took him to school. They mentioned that they had gone to Walgreens to buy some flip-flops and then returned to the house. There was also a lot of questions by the cops about when the shooting occurred, when Lori had left, and Alex was saying Lori had left 20 minutes ago. We now know that that's incorrect because Alex called Lori from the house and he did not call the police until 43 minutes after that phone call. At the end of the end of the police investigation, I'm going to use air quotes, investigation of Charles Vallow's murder, it is declared that it is self-defense and everybody goes home for the night, which is absolutely unbelievable to me and to most people. And thank God that Rexburg police have since reopened the case, classified as a murder, and Lori is going to be held accountable for this. Unfortunately, Alex is now deceased, so he cannot be, but there you go. So now we see Lori and Tylee return to the scene. Lori is doing her famous, we're separated. We've only lived here a couple weeks. And that's why I'm like, hi, neighbor, sorry. And Tylee is standing there quite unaffected, is what it appears to be. I don't know what she's feeling inside. I don't know what the conversation between leaving the house and going to Burger King, dropping JJ off at school and buying the flip-flops was, but for whatever reason, she's seeing some shaken. Also at this point, Justin Lum, who is a reporter for Fox in Arizona, makes his debut in this docuseries. Justin Lum is one of the reporters that has been covering this since day one. He was one of the people that saw this as a big case with some that just didn't seem right from the beginning. And the rest of the world, once this case, once the children were declared missing later on, we're just playing catch up. He was there from, ground level. So Justin Lum comes in there. He makes some comments. He says, Lori's actually smiling. She's holding back a smile while she's talking to the cops. She doesn't even ask if her husband is okay. Now they are separated, but it's still somebody that she has been with for a very long period of time. It is someone that, she adopted a child with. It's always disturbing to watch. So now we have Colby, and he's talking about how, he loved Charles. Charles was a father figure. Charles offered the family stability. He also offered them a very affluent lifestyle they were not used to before. And it was the first time in his life they weren't moving all the time. Colby actually lived in that house longer than he lived any other place in his life. So Mom, Lori Vallow, calls Colby at work and tells him that unfortunately Charles has died. He had a heart attack. Colby gets through the rest of his day at work. He returns he drives over to the house where Lori is living with Tylee and JJ. Alex is sitting in the living room. Lori's outside. They don't mention the pool party. He says he goes outside and talks to his mom, and then his mom says, Alex shot him. So we don't know why Lori lied to Colby originally. We also find out in this episode that she told the people at JJ's school, the employees at JJ's school, that Charles committed suicide. So she's got all kinds of stories about how Charles has passed. Uncle Alex is sitting on the couch with a bandage around his head and just kind of casually states like, oh, he got in my face, and so I had to shoot him. So Colby's in the twilight zone. We hear from Kelsey at this point, Colby's wife, and she said, after Colby told me all this news, coming back from the house, how strange everything was, she said, I don't want anything to do with your family ever again. I have a bad feeling about this. She says she called her mom. She told her mom she had a bad feeling about this. Nothing about this felt right or good. And that was kind of her stance. And you can't help to think that when somebody says, I'm not going to have anything to do with your family, that is not a huge stressor on you. I'm thinking about Colby a lot in this particular episode because there are a lot of things he says that I've thought about before, but maybe I thought harder on, or I just took it more seriously this time. I don't know. There was something about this particular episode where I had more empathy for Colby than I think I ever have, even with his recent sexual assault charges. And so I may talk about this later, but we heard, and if you haven't listened to the Mommy Doomsday podcast, please do. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best resource out there for learning this case. And it's amazing. And I can't say anything bad about it at all. But in the Mommy Doomsday podcast, Colby describes his relationship with her mom as being her little best friend, in that he is told very adult things all the time. He always has knowledge of whether or not they have money, if they're going to be able to pay the rent. If they have to move, they have to move. He just does it. He knows how to pack. He's involved in a lot of adult conversations. He knows who mommy likes, who she doesn't like, and why. He probably has knowledge above his age level about other adults and transgressions and things of that nature. And I'm saying this because there is a part in this episode where he expresses some guilt for when Tylee and JJ disappear. He said, they moved away to Arizona, and I was so upset about it. He's like, but then, Kelsey and I got pregnant with their first daughter, Riley. And he's looking at, we had our own marriage. I had a baby. I was working. I just wanted to be, I was a dad. I was wrapped up in my own life, and I didn't see what was going on in theirs. And to me, that was an insight that, like, I've seen it before, but I just really thoroughly digested it this time. He was Lori's keeper. He was really the parent in this family, and that you've got to wonder about what that says about Lori's mental health. Like what kind of a person she is. He is the parent. She burdens him with parental problems and makes things his responsibility, to the point where when he's an adult and he's out of the house and he's having his own family, he still feels responsible for his mother. So that was a little hard to see that weight that was on him. I'm going to look at the chat in just a minute, you guys. So the next thing we see is a scene where Lori calls the insurance company. A couple days have passed since Charles was murdered. And she calls the insurance company, and she finds out that we don't see it on camera, but and I wonder if people that didn't know this picked up on this stuff, or if they had to research it, because we can fill in the gaps. This part doesn't flow real well. It's the recording that we've heard of her calling the insurance company, and she says, I'm reporting. They said, whose death are you reporting? And she's like, the name and how did he die? And she says, after some hesitation, well, he was shot. She believes she's the beneficiary. That person puts her on hold. We know later that she is not. Yeah, Charles has changed his will, or changed his life insurance policy, and made Kay, his sister, the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy. And Lori was livid. They don't include that part. They infer it. So then we see a text message come up on the screen from Lori. It's to Chad, and she says, so I talked to insurance company. He changed it in March, so it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me, of course, but it's done. But I'll still get the $4,000 a month from SS, meaning Social Security. And we'll go back to that in a second. And Chad replies, I love you. This is terrible, but it's probably another step in bringing down the Gandhi Antons, especially Brandon. And then Lori says, I'm thinking it must be Kay. So she's still talking about who the beneficiary is. He's talking about bringing down the people that are standing in their way on their mission. And he specifically mentions Brandon. And he says, it'll be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest. And she replies, I don't think it could have. You can't change it after the death date. They would review that. And then he says, yes, I'm thinking Kay as well. I'm going to shower and give you a blessing. It'll really be okay, my love. You are wonderful. And so the next scene is Colby explaining how Tylee has now moved to Arizona, and he is trying to get in touch with her, and he's not been as good about staying in touch with her because he's busy with the new baby, but it's her birthday, so he sends her a text. And he says, "Hey, Ty, happy birthday. I'm so proud of you. I know you've been through more than most people ever go through in their life, but you're amazing, and I know you can have an amazing life. You keep pushing, trust God. It's all going to be not just okay, but amazing. I love you and happy birthday." And then there's like a little gift emoji. And she responds, "Thanks, Colbs." And he's kind of like, that's all, like I haven't talked to you in so long. That's all I get. So then he starts sharing some other messages that he's sending to her. He's like, "Are you going to call me today?" And she says, "I'll call you back later. Love you." And he says, "Okay, call me tonight, please." And she says, "At the movies, I'll call you later." He goes, "Ty, please call me after your movie. I'm worried about you." And she says, "Worried about me? What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I haven't talked to you in so long." Now he's having a moment where he's like, this doesn't sound like my sister. She's responding in all lowercase letters. She's kind of texting like my mom. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm having a crazy moment, but I really, really, really need to hear her voice. So he then talks to his mom, and mom's like, "Don't worry, she's just busy." And then when he gets really upset, he's cut off. He never hears from Tylee again. Like, never gets another message. All right, so I'm gonna take a break. So I've been talking, and see what you guys are chatting about. So let's start from the beginning. I see a lot of hellos. Hi everybody. Hello, Sushi crew. Good to see you all. I love it. True Crime Lovers Gang. Oh, good. You watched last episode. Awesome. Yeah, well, Tracy, I know. Tracy says, "Aim, you left out Alex hits himself in the back of the head with said bat." Yeah, he does. He does. It's hard for me I'm trying to stick to what the documentary is telling us, because they don't tell us that. They don't tell us. We know that. But what this series is supposed to be teaching us, they don't provide that information. So that makes it hard. Yeah, Heather Feather said, "That was so sad. The police treated him as if he was the criminal for asking for help." And she's referring to Charles when he's talking to the police. Hey, Julian, good to see you. Let's see. Yeah, I bet the cop. I hope I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but I hope the cops do have nightmares about not stepping in. So now we're talking about Justin Lum. Candy Williams says, "Tylee may have learned over time to numb out some of her emotions in order to cope with the dysfunction of her family." You know, Kitty, that's really that's pretty profound. I agree. I can't imagine, although we know that Tylee was contrary with Lori, if Tylee even had an idea that this was planned, if she saw it happen, any of that, you would be compliant. Now, Janice, her grandmother, has a differing opinion. She doesn't believe that Tylee saw anything, nor does she believe that Tylee could have been silenced about anything, and that Tylee would not have covered for her mother, because her reasoning is Tylee was a teenager. Now, Tylee was very outspoken, and Tylee also tended to be, she was a teenager and she was strong-willed. She tended to be combative. If she didn't like something, you knew about it. That's what we hear about her. So these two things are kind of diametrically opposed. You can't really make sense of, like, would she really be quiet? I find it hard to believe that Tylee didn't see anything, and there's no blame there. I'm not blaming her. But she does mention to the cops at one point that after they heard the gunshots, which Lori didn't think were that loud, so she wasn't that concerned, but she was concerned enough to get her kids and get in Charles's rental car and leave. But then she realizes she doesn't have her purse. And so this situation that's so dangerous that she has to get out and take somebody else's car, she sends her teenage daughter back into to go get her purse. And apparently her purse was in her mom's bedroom closet. So Tylee had to run through the house, and the way Tylee explains it is I just didn't look at anything. I just ran through the house. I didn't look at anything. I have some serious issues with that. I don't think we'll ever know what really happened, but I think we can say that that's not the truth. And the motivation to lie, was it intimidation? Was it fear? Was it both? I don't know. I really don't. I'm so behind in the chat. It's hard when you're doing this by yourself sometimes, because it's like you don't want to stop, but I want to acknowledge you and I want to see what you're doing. Okay, this is interesting because I do see somebody said Lori wanted Tylee's money, and I'm going to talk about that before we go back. But I also see that Sweet Penguin and Petunia has comments, and I wanted to go find those too. Hey, Miss Peaches, you're never late. She says, I'll have to listen to that podcast. I don't have a TV, so all this is really helpful to me following the case. The Mommy Doomsday podcast is done by, I'm drawing a blank. Keith. Give me a second. I'll write it down and then I'll remember it. Keith Morrison. There you go. Who, fun fact, do you know that Keith Morrison is the stepfather to Matthew Perry, the guy who played Chandler on Friends? I did not know that until recently. So I'll pass along that useless information to you. But I don't know. I don't know why I just said it. I just did because that was my pen, by the way. Noise. Me and my fun facts. What can I say? But yeah, the Mommy Doomsday podcast, excellent. Apple, Spotify, find it a lot of places. Really, really good, really thorough. And I'm going to do the last part of this on Friday, episode 3. But I can tell you that a lot of this documentary follows not just the timeline of the case, because if I was like, oh, well, it's the same way, and it's a timeline, like, that wouldn't be a good point. But it's like point for point and Colby to Colby and certain facts, they like align a lot. That's really interesting. But the podcast definitely fills in the gaps, and it's a really good way to get to know the players of this case. And the other thing about it is because it's not visual, it's not as distracting. You're not trying to look at things. If you already have an image of who somebody is in your mind, then that can kind of pop in, and that's all you're doing. You're not analyzing somebody when they're talking because there's no visuals to it. So there's that. So we're talking about the $4,000 a month, or Tylee's money and JJ's money, the Social Security money. So the money that Lori got for JJ having autism and his issues, and then the money that Tylee was receiving from the state after the death of her father, Joe Ryan. So she tells Chad, like, I'll still get my $4,000 a month. What they leave out here is that Lori ranted and raved. I mean, this was a big deal, losing this life insurance policy, this $1 million. She was very upset. She was, I'm left with, 5 kids. So she's counting up Charles's other 2 children, other 2 boys. She's counting up Colby, and then Tylee and JJ. When in reality, she was only taking care of Tylee and JJ. How am I going to pay my bills? She doesn't work. All these other things. I'm wondering how she supported herself before she was actually with Chad Chad had to be helping her, or Alex had to be helping her, or her parents had to be helping her, because $4,000 a month to rent a townhouse, to keep the internet on, to have their cell phones, to spend money on Amazon, to buy food, is not going to go very far. And with a move on top of that, a move from Arizona to Idaho. So that is interesting to me. Continue says, YouTube has been educating me for sure, but anything that can tighten up all those crazy details is really valuable. Yeah, absolutely. I'm telling you, it's a wonderful resource. All right. So back to where we are. I'm going to look at my notes. So now we have this kind of visual thing. It's kind of like a new agey graphic, and it's Lori's voice. And it reads like this. It says, and I went to other worlds. I have fought in this war. I have fought in this war for millennia. She says it like that. I fought in this war for millennia. And that's who I am. And I came down here to be a warrior and fight. And then done with that. And they flash back to Charles Vallow again, back when he was alive, before he was murdered, talking to Rexburg police. And he's saying she's lost her mind. It's that voice clip of him saying to the police, like, she lost her mind. He's like, I'm worried about my kids. So now we're back to Kelsey and Colby talking about finding out that Charles is dead, trying to figure out why Lori lied about Charles having a heart attack. And then Alex like, oh, well, he got in my face and I shot him. What the disconnect there was. Why wouldn't you tell me right away? And they start talking about all the emails that Charles had sent that they had never read. Kelsey says, we just never read them. So she starts going back and reading them, and she finds, she reads them all. But one in particular that she finds is a forwarded email from Charles. It originally was Chad Daybell sending it to Lori, and it was called Family History Documents. And he says, here are the family history documents you requested. And these were sent on October 30th, 2018. And Kelsey starts looking at this, and it's a list of everybody in their family. And it lists Janice, the grandmother, and it says 3L, Stacy Cox Cope, who is deceased, but it says was a 3L on Earth. Alex Cox is a 2L, and Lori is a 4.3L. Now, according to this chart, and we'll get into that in a moment, L stands for light. Now, Colby Ryan is a 3L, so he's a 3 light. Kelsey Ryan sees her own name on this, and she is noted as a 3D, a 3 dark. Tylee Ryan, who nobody has talked to, is a 4.1 dark. And then they flash back to Charles, again, talking to the police on the Rexburg body cam, and he says, I don't know what she'll do with them. I don't know if she'll flee with them or if she'll hurt them. And then Kelsey says she looks at who this email is from. It says Chad Daybell, and it's kind of a iconic soundbite in the docuseries. Kelsey says, who the hell is Chad Daybell? And then they flash Chad Daybell on the screen, Mr. No Chin himself. So now Dr. Matthias is on the screen, and it's his voice, and he is talking about Chad's light and dark scale, explaining Chad's beliefs on that, talking about how Chad and Lori were obsessed with people being zombies, like the Ned Snyder or Nick Snyder that took over Charles's body. The rest of us know that a lot of people had alter egos inside of them and were referred to by other names. So let's see. In the next scene, they're showing some text messages between Lori and Alex, and Alex says, "Proud of you." And well, he had asked her, he was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Fighting Z's." And then he's like, "Meaning zombies." And he's like, "Okay, proud of you." And she's like, "No more Z's. We're trying to get to the bottom of what we need to eliminate them completely. I'm not sure if you'll be told also." And she says, "Bad news on our brother." And then they show a picture of Adam Cox on the screen. And Alex says, "What's that? Like, what's the bad news?" And she said, "Z," like meaning, "Oh, now Adam's a zombie." And Alex says, "Really? When was that?" And she's like, "As of early January." And he's like, "That explains his interest in Charles." So now Alex is like, "Oh, okay, well, that's why he came into town. That's why he was talking to Charles." And something the documentary leaves out is that Lori and Charles, according to Lori, were fighting over Charles's phone. And after Charles was shot, she had possession of his phone for some time. So she was able to go through and look at all his conversations, his emails, everything. So she was, she had ideas before, and she had some knowledge before that Charles was corresponding with her brother and that there was an intervention planned. But any of those missing gaps were now filled in because she could go through everything in his phone, and she had time to do it. And so after all of this, she's like, "Oh, Adam's a Z." Go figure. Adam's lucky to be alive, honestly. And he says, that explains his interest in Charles. And she's like, "More sad news. Guess who else is the final Z?" And Alex says, "Pops," meaning their dad. And she says, or he goes, "Pops or Brandon?" So this is the second time in this episode that we've seen Brandon's name mentioned. Brandon was mentioned by Chad back in the life insurance text messages. Like, we have to get rid of these people that are working against us, including Brandon. And now we have Alex guessing about who the next Z is, and he's guessing either their dad or Brandon. So that's a little foreshadowing. So we skip through. It's now October 2nd, 2019. We're back in Gilbert, Arizona. And we are talking about Brandon Boudreau getting shot at, being his attempted murder, his attempted shoot, or it was an attempted shooting because he was shot at. So they kind of lay it out like this. They show some footage of Alex at a gun range, and he's talking about, let's see. Well, they show a picture on the screen of Melanie Boudreau, who is Lori Vallow's niece. She's now known as Melanie Pulowski because she was remarried, with Brandon. They have recently been divorced. And then they show a picture of Alex at the gun range. He is talking about the gun he's using. He's saying that's a 50 caliber semi-automatic, and it's going into this humongous gun. And they show all the bullets and him loading it. And then the next thing we see is some body cam footage, and it kind of cuts off. Now we've got Julie Rowe on the screen. And for those of you who don't know, Julie Rowe is she believes in the end days too. She's a spiritual leader. She writes books. She used to be published under Chad's publishing company. And she worked hand in hand with Chad. She's different. As are a lot of people here. So Julie says, how do I phrase this? she says that Lucifer, so this gets very spiritual. She says that Lucifer was whispering into Chad's ear that he and Lori were the Davidic king and queen who would start the Church of the Firstborn. So this is what Chad is telling people, and she's like, Chad's saying he got this from God, and she's saying, no, this was Lucifer. And she goes on to explain why. She says it's because Christ is supposed to start the Church of the Firstborn. That's in the teachings. Christ starts it, not Chad Daybell and not Lori Vallow. And she said, he was into a lot of weird stuff. She kind of makes fun of herself. She says, people say I'm into weird stuff. She's like, but I work for the light side and Chad works for the dark side. So that's her opinion of Chad, is that he has been corrupted by Lucifer. She said Lucifer was talking in his ear to puff up his ego, his vain, his ambition, and his vain ambition and his pride. So let's think about that. She's saying Lucifer is building Chad up to do these things, and he's feeding Chad's ego, his vain ambition, and his pride. So whether that's Lucifer or that's the inner evil inside Chad, whatever you believe, his own personal defect, I believe she's correct in that. She said, Chad was wrong about a lot of stuff. And I'm going to kind of stop right there, because when she says Chad was wrong about a lot of stuff, we know that he was wrong about dates. He would say, like, such and such is going to happen on this date, and then it wouldn't happen. And he'd be like, oh, well, there's a problem with the calibration of the calendar when it comes through the portal, or, like some thingamajig answer about why something didn't happen, why his prophecy did not come true, or, part of it came true, or it's because of this, or there's some sort of benefit. There was always an excuse. But in this particular documentary, they frame it up to be about his wife, because he had told Julie Rowe that we all know that he told people that Tammy Daybell, his wife, that her veil was thinning, which means that her passing is soon, like she will die soon. That's what it means for the veil to thin, right? And he had shared with Julie that he had a prophecy, a vision of Tammy in his pickup truck running off the road and hitting a pole and dying, and that did not happen. So they don't go into it any more extensive than that. So she said, that was the last time he saw Chad in person, he had shared that thing, and that this is important, that he had seen her spirit leave her body. And so now we fast forward to October 9th, 2019. This is the night that Tammy's in her driveway and somebody tries to shoot at her. It says that, a man in a ski mask came up to her. That's kind of not how we heard it. But we do have Tammy's own words in a Facebook post in a minute. She's not hit. She sees somebody with a gun pointed at her. She's not hit, but she screams and she calls for Chad. She says Chad ran around to the back after she screamed and was trying to talk to the suspect in a ski mask with a paintball gun. I must have missed that. I've never heard that version before. This is the only thing that I heard that's new in this documentary, and I'm still not, because these are Justin Lum's words, I obviously did miss something, and I'm human. If anybody else had been saying it, I'm not sure I would accept it. But apparently Tammy says that Chad was trying to talk to the person in the ski mask, which is weird. If somebody shoots at me and they have a ski mask, I'm not having a conversation with them. I'm calling the cops. I'm running. I'm hiding. I'm protecting my life. I'm protecting my family, my kids, my dog, whatever it is. The groceries I just bought. not going to have a conversation with him. That to me is just strange. Then Tammy makes her Facebook post. It says, okay, neighbors, October 9th, Tammy Daybell, Facebook. Something really weird just happened, and I want you to know so you can watch out. I had gotten home and parked in the front driveway. As I was getting stuff out of the back seat, a guy wearing a ski mask was suddenly standing by the back of my car with a paintball gun. He shot at me several times, although I don't think it was loaded. I yelled for Chad, and he ran off around the back of my house. I have no idea what his motive was, and he never spoke, even after I asked him several times what he thought he was doing. I was about to smack him with my freezer meals from enrichment tonight when I decided to yell for Chad instead. Which, not victim blaming, but it's probably the last thing I would have thought about doing. I would run. So that's just me. It's that's something different that I just hadn't heard before. Then they flash back to Julie Rowe, and she says, at this time, Chad had started saying to Julie that I just don't think my plan, meaning preparing for the 144,000 and the end of the world, that he doesn't think his plan can move forward until the spouses are dead. So he's dropping another clue. So Julie has kind of a scrunched up face when she hears this or when she's retelling it. I don't know how serious she took it at the time. I don't know. I think Julie has pulled back and accepted less responsibility about how involved this. I think, since all this has happened, she's kind of like, I wasn't part of it. I didn't believe all of it. Chad was full of whatever. I think she was totally into it, because if you weren't totally into it, that's something that when people started dying, you'd go to the police and you'd be like, hey, I work with this guy and he has a plan about the world ending. I know it sounds crazy, but here's the books and here's conversations and here's podcasts. I got it all lined up for you. Her husband just died. He told me they can't move was murdered. They can't move forward or shot in self-defense, whatever they were calling it at the time. He's saying our plans for the end of the world can't move forward as long as the spouses are still here. And now his wife has been shot at. So Julie, I think we all know, not the most credible. She's protecting herself. She's trying to act like she's all innocent right now. But just for the record, I'm not buying it. This is a really good comment. Penguin says, why didn't Adam speak up to the cops after he found out about Charles? He warned Charles not to go in the house. He was on board with the intervention. He knew. Why didn't he talk to law enforcement? That is the $1 million question. I wish I had the answer for it. Instead of doing that, he went to a friend's wedding. He had come into town to have an intervention with Lori. He was supposed to stay with Alex. Alex ghosted him. So Adam ended up staying with his parents, Janice and Barry. Charles is texting him saying he's going to the house. Gets to the house. He texts Charles, texts Adam and says, oh, Alex is here. Adam's like, dude, not a good sign. Don't go in. Charles like, I'll be fine. Of course, we all know now he wasn't. And then Adam just leaves town. There is some stories that we've heard that the night that Charles died, he was at the house at his, or a couple days afterwards, he was at his mom and dad's house, and everybody was mad at him because Lori had the phone and found out that Adam was conspiring with Charles, and Lori had turned everybody against Adam, and so Adam and his son Zach, left town. Adam says that he was in fear of his life as long as Alex was still alive, because Alex had become like the hitman. He was just around every time when bad things happened, and definitely kind of had a like a presence of being like Lori's minion or henchman or something along those lines. So Alex was bad news. If you saw Alex coming, probably wanted to run the other way as quickly as you could. And so I don't know, Penguin. I've always thought one of the most credible interviews I saw was one with Zach Cox being interviewed by Justin Long. I thought it was very forthright. I thought that when he talked about certain things, like, it's really not my place to judge, but the appropriate emotions and expressions were on his face. To me, I related to it. I found it credible. I have felt that way about Adam as well, but this one thing that you bring up troubles me as well. Why didn't he do something if that was the case? Hello, insightful one. It's good to see you. Agent 99 asks, are Lori's mom and dad still together? The answer is yes. You never see them on camera together. Her dad does Zoom, and Janice is always with Summer or Colby. Yeah, I don't have an explanation for that dynamic. I don't. Janice is very superficial, where she has a very superficial side, I guess I will say. Lori's father is been known to be called a sovereign citizen. He's had trouble with the IRS and law enforcement in the past. He doesn't believe that the rules apply to him. He tries to find little ways to wiggle out of constitutional things. He's a little strange. He finds himself to be superior to other people. He is he has self-appointed superiority. And that's important because Lori has self-appointed superiority too. So it definitely comes down the family line. So I wish I had an answer for that, but I don't. Let's see. Yeah, it makes you wonder if Chad tampered with the vehicles. There's a lot of us have talked about that. If those cars have been looked at the time of Tammy's death or around that time, if there was anything that looked like it had been, pulled out and that was just a plan that didn't go right, because a lot of things don't go right for Chad. He's kind of a bumbling idiot, to be honest. Also remember that we're following this story, and so we know who the players are, but Chad knew Alex at this point when Tammy shot at with the paintball gun. Chad and Alex know each other because of Lori. Tammy has no idea who Alex is. So Chad may have been having a conversation with Alex because he knew it was Alex. And Tammy doesn't have this knowledge. That's why when eventually they discover the bodies of Tylee and JJ on Chad's property, and they also have Alex's cell phone pinging there, you've got to remember that when those bodies were buried, Tammy was still alive. That's one. Tammy does not know Alex. There's no reason for Alex to be over there because Tammy's still alive and Chad is still married to Tammy, not married to Lori. Chad has absolutely no business being at that home, which is why it pops up on the radar like fluorescent dye to anybody looking at this case. Let's see. Hey, Paula from Oklahoma. Yep, he was it, man. Yeah, I hadn't heard. Miss Peaches says, I never heard that version of a paint gun except that Chad ran back to the house. Yeah, me either. So, but like I said, this is in Justin Lum's words, so I missed something. So there's what this docuseries brought me in new information and what I need to go figure out. Pam or Paula, sorry. My nose is just so bad. Somebody must be talking about me. Ooh, it's just Paula. I don't know the date, but Adam did talk to law enforcement. There's a recording of that conversation. Yeah, there is, but they had to reach out to him. Like he didn't right. What we're talking about is right after Charles is found dead. He doesn't go to law enforcement. He doesn't say like, "Hey, I was texting him yesterday. I told him not to go in the house. My sister's crazy. She believes in zombies and dark spirits. She believed he was." He doesn't do that. He leaves town. I'm sorry. It's so bad. Yeah, Janice is in denial. Queen of Cleopatra, queen of denial. Let's see. Maybe he thought nobody would believe him with Alex and Lori on Tylee's statements all matching. It's possible, but again, life decisions. You can't say I would do something because you don't know until you're in somebody's shoes. I would like to think that at that point, if people around me are dropping dead and other people are saying, you're a zombie and you should die, I might say, I'm going to the police, just even if they don't believe me. I'm going, and then I'll leave town and try to stay away from Alex. Annette Herrera says, I don't think it was a paintball gun. Alex had quite a few firearms in his possession. You have to take into account that Brandon Boudreau had also been shot at when he was in his vehicle. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Absolutely. Gosh, Penguin, you have really good comments all the time, and I so appreciate it. I appreciate everybody that comments. I don't mean that like nobody else does, but tonight you are on a roll. Penguin says, I think Julie Rowe was hoping to have Lori's position. She also was told that she had been married to Chad in the past life. She knew Chad had prophesied that Tammy would die before he ever met Lori. Yep, that's true. I think so too. I think Julie Rowe was his work wife and his celestial wife until Lori came into the picture, and Julie was a little bitter about that too. I agree. And I think that Julie was full on with this plan. She believed in Chad's prophecy. She saw some of the errors in what he was doing, but she was still full on part of that. She only started rejecting things when she wasn't, his woman, and when people started getting murdered and law enforcement started getting involved. I will pull, you guys are talking about the conversation with Adam Cox. I'll pull that up and I'll post it on YouTube. Give me a couple days so that we can quick reference it and y'all can go, or I will drop a link in the description of this video. Just give me some time to do that. And we can talk about that too. Yeah. Alex's phone was pinging at 2 different locations on Chad's property. Again, remember, Chad is still married to Tammy. Tammy's still alive. Tammy and Alex don't know each other. Alex had no business being there. Yep. Julie thought she was going to be Chad's second wife in the Creed, and so she sours on him when he goes for Lori instead. Yep. Oh, good. Agent 99 says I heard about the paintball gun. Yeah, I'd heard about the paintball gun too. I just had never heard the part about Chad confronting the masked man in the driveway. To me, that's extremely odd. All right. So let's see. Let's get back to my notes. So when Chad says, I just don't think my plan can go forward until the spouses are dead, Julie says her reaction is like, what? You're so crazy, Chad. Oh, you're so crazy. She doesn't do anything about it. People start dying. She doesn't do anything about it, but okay, so the next thing we see on the screen is a text bubble from Chad, and it says, hello, sweet angel. Big news about Tammy. Please let me know if you are awake and can talk. I love you. And then he says, the short version is what she has been switched. So here's where he drops the bomb that his wife is now a zombie. Tammy Daybell is now a zombie. He says Tammy is in limbo, and at a level 3 demonic entity named Viola is in her body. It happened about 10 p.m. And what's interesting about some of the things that Julie Rowe says about Satan telling Chad what to do, the light and dark scale, and then Dr. Matthias describing the light and dark scale, is that all these determinations, who's light, who's dark, who is possessed, what their names are, when it happened, All of this information comes from Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell creates this narrative. He calls the shots. So he's sitting at home, things aren't working out real well, and he's like, you know what? Yep, 10 p.m. My wife became a 3D demonic entity, and her name is looks at something purple and says Viola, and I must text Lori and tell her. Everybody's responsible for their own actions in this case, but Chad was determining these things. He was delivering the information, and then Lori was helping to disseminate it to people who had gone dark, who was in trouble, who was the threat. We don't see it in this docuseries, at least at this point. I'm going to turn off my camera for a second. I am so sorry. Give me a second here. Okay, there's my big head. I'll come back in a second. I bet you guys are going to miss me in real life, but oh my gosh, my nose. And I just have to get it out of my system. Okay, so we know, as people that have studied this case quite a bit, that Chad would even do this. Like Lori would be having these meetings with, her girlfriends, and the prayer meetings and the casting meetings and things like that. And Chad would call or text and give them updates on who was light or dark. He was in control of that. Got to find a better word for narrative. But he was definitely the one deciding these things, declaring these things. Somebody says, it reminds me of the board game, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah. Or like, maybe he's the guy in charge of the Dungeons and the Dragon Master. Is that what they call him? In Dungeons and Dragons. Like he creates the story and everybody else interacts in it. And that's, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm really not, because this is a very serious case, and there's so much tragedy and so just a trail of blood and flesh and destroyed lives and everything else. But this is nothing that other people haven't said before, or that you've heard me say a long time ago and over again. A lot of this stuff seems to come from pop culture. It does seem to come from Walking Dead. It does seem to come from Dungeons and Dragons. It does seem to come from shows, I don't think it's a far stretch. I think you could draw parallels to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't think that's crazy to say. I think they were making it up as they went along. And so Chad says, he texts Lori, he says the short version is that she has been switched. Tammy is in limbo, and a level 3 demonic entity named Viola is in her body, and it happened about 10 p.m. And then he says, beautiful Lily, because that's what he starts calling Lori now, is Lily. I'm eager to see you soon, trying to hasten her departure. Love you endlessly. So trying to hasten her departure, he's working on getting rid of Tammy. At this point, Lori is like, hey, my husband's dead. And your wife needs to be dead too, so we don't have to do this portal BS. I don't have any money. She needs to die. Let's get the show on the road, or I'm not here anymore. And Chad is whipped because he finds Lori to be incredibly attractive, and he wants this hot little piece of A. And she's playing a game with him, even though she's supposed to be his, celestial bride or dream girl, or, Jesus picked them to be together. She's playing games. And she's like, it's now or never, babe. So you better get the show on the road. And so this is him, doing that. All right. So now it is October 19th. So let's go back on the calendar. It is October 9th. Tammy shot at her driveway. 10 days later, Tammy Daybell dies 10 days later. And this doesn't throw up red flags everywhere, which blows my mind. So a 49-year-old woman who appears to be healthy passes away in her home at night. No autopsy. Lori doesn't get any money from Charles passing because Kay ends up being the beneficiary, right? But Chad has maxed out Tammy Daybell's life insurance policy, and so he's paid out $430,000. So she's dead. He's $430,000 richer. And we all know how this works. In a very short amount of time, within weeks, he will marry Lori in Hawaii. In the meantime, this documentary goes on to say that and they now present us with Zulema. And Zulema Pastenes is, I don't know if I should start calling them disciples, but she's a follower of Chad Daybell, and she believes that she has gifts. She believes in natural healing. She also has a company where she does something called cuddle therapy, which is quite interesting. So she cuddles with you until you feel better. She is told by Chad Daybell that in order to be sealed for eternity in the afterlife, she needs to be married. Chad tells her this during a blessing, and he tells her that she will be married again soon. And in order for people to finish their mission, they need to be paired up. They need to be equally yoked, meaning like when you're hooking oxen to a cart, they equally yoked. Both harnesses have to be fit the same way. So in order to complete the mission that their little group wants to do, I shouldn't say a little group because we now believe that it's a much bigger group of people. Not everybody believes that, but I believe this. And that they're still out there. That her and whoever she marries has to be equal in her spirituality. And so Chad says, well, I believe Alex Cox will be that for you, and you two should get married. So they go out to Vegas and they get married. And that same weekend, Melanie Boudreau, who is now divorced, she goes out there with Ian Pulaski and they get married. And they are all witnesses for each other. So we see, 4 people in this group hook up in one weekend out in Vegas getting married. Ian and Melanie did not know each other very long either. They met on an online Mormon dating site. So this is all very rushed, very hurried, very cult. It's interesting that they did legal marriages and not just sealings to each other, but that's a whole nother story. So as Lema said, so then they started saying, Alex will be the part of that for you. He will be the person who will be able to help you with your mission. And they were saying that we should be together. And she says, she was praying about it. And I said, okay, I think it's time for me to marry him. So on November 29th, Alex got married to Zulema. We know that Alex takes Zulema's last name, which is weird. So he goes from Alex Cox to Alex Pastenes. And then Melanie and Ian Pulaski, who had only known each other for 2 weeks, got married that same weekend. Let's see. The next thing we see is on the screen, Zulema sending a text, and she said, the Lord has placed a new yearning in my heart. It's so beautiful. I only want to read, study, learn, go to temple, and serve him. I'm really leaving the world behind. So this is how entrenched she is in this new concept of doomsday, pairing up, preparing, the 144,000, all the ideas that Chad's selling to them. And so she sends this text to Chad, and I'm having trouble reading my own handwriting. Chad replies, I'm so happy for you, Zalema. You are on the right path and you've already received your calling. And then he says, don't worry, you will know when to gather. So you'll know when the right time is. He says, I actually feel you'll be among the first people to gather to the safest white camps. You're part of the team. And he's just like you're part of the team. Like he's like he's some like low level boss, trying to do like an inspiration email to an employee. Like, you're part of the team, go get him. Attaboy. It's really strange. So let's see. So they had prophesied that the end of the world was July 22nd. So they're trying to do all this preparation like very quickly before this comes. So we're still like, months away. The next thing we hear are some voicemails that Kay Woodcock, who is JJ Vallow's grandmother, was leaving for Lori. She's worried. She can't find, she hasn't talked to JJ. She just wants some communication with JJ. She's saying, please, Lori, just let us know he's okay. They haven't talked to JJ in about 2 months. So they're becoming very, very concerned. It's November, and I think the last time they had really talked to JJ, it was a very, very quick phone call, like 37 seconds on FaceTime. And they were used to like very regular contact with this child. So this is when, and these grandparents, my God, this is when Kay and Larry go full force. They are not having it anymore. They're trying to, not only are they blowing up Lori's phone and not getting anywhere, they're calling the police, but they don't know. Lori's moved, and Lori hasn't told anybody where she moved to. And so she's trying to, they're desperately trying to get in touch. And, but it's hard because nobody knows where Lori is, right? Well, Kay happens to, so the documentary shows us that Kay happens to be looking at, she gets into Charles, her brother's old Amazon account, and there's recent order made for a malachite ring. We now know that it was Lori and Chad's wedding rings, in a ship to address. And so she turns that ship to address over to the police, and the police start their wellness check. So that begins on November 26th of 2019. They go to Ray Hermosillo, who is the detective we see in court a lot now. He actually goes to the house. Chad and Alex answer the door. Chad pretends like, he doesn't really know who Lori is. Like, I'm just hanging out with my bro, Alex. They tell the police that Lori's out in another apartment 107. That happens to be Melanie Pulowski's apartment, her townhouse. So at this point, we're getting information, or this documentary is telling us that everybody, and of course we all know this already, but that a lot of people have moved to Rexburg. Melanie up and left, went to Rexburg. Alex moves to Rexburg. Lori's in Rexburg. They're all living in the same complex. And so I think we know how the rest of this goes. The cops, ask, they finally get in touch with Lori. Lori's like, hey, everybody's all up in my business. I don't know why people are so worried about what I'm doing. It's driving me crazy. I just want some peace. My son is fine. He is, he's with my friend Melanie. Sure, try to get in touch with her or whatever. And, I'm just trying to be a good person. Now, I missed one thing. Alex had said at one point when the cops first came that JJ was probably with the grandparents, and the cops immediately shut him down and said, no, I don't think that's possible because they're the ones that called us. So that was shut down right away. So the police leave, and they come back because they can't get a hold of Melanie. And Lori comes up with a second story. She's like, oh, I think they went to a movie today. He just needed to be out back in Arizona because he wasn't doing well out here. He wasn't handling the change. He needed his special school, blah, blah, blah. She's probably in the movies, and that's why she didn't answer the phone. So they're like, well, can you try to get her on the phone and then reach back out to us and let us know what's happening? And she's like, sure, I'm so sorry. And you can tell at this point that there are certain officers that, again, are buying her like sweet little act, or looking at her like she's a little haughty, and they're just smitten that Lori's even talking to them. There were some things that were interesting that happened during this this interface, and let me look through my notes because I'm getting unorganized. Sorry. Let me look through this. Let's see. Oh, okay. So here's where it is. The police officer says, Lori, I'm Lieutenant Ball with the police department. He's like, we've been looking for you. And we were at your apartment, and we ran into probably one of your brothers. And she says, oh, my brother Alex, and maybe he was with somebody else. And she's like, Chad Daybell, he's an author or whatever. And they're like, who's that? And she says, oh, they've been moving, Chad. And he says, okay. And Daybell? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, Daybell. And Lori's like, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. All glowy. And he's like, is that the Chad Daybell? No, this is an audio recording. He's like, is that the Chad Daybell whose wife just passed recently? And she's like, oh, I think so. Like, the cops already kind of had this connection on the spot. Like, they're like, okay, this guy says he doesn't know her, but she knows he's supposed to be a friend of her brother's. And she's like, oh, he's Chad. He's an author. And they're like, why is he in your apartment? And is he the guy whose wife just died? Like, what's going on with this? Like, it's all very, very weird. And so then she goes into, I don't tell people the truth about what they're doing because I'm constantly having people knocking on my door looking for me. I just want to live my life. Leave me alone. Blah, blah, blah. So now at this point, they leave and they say, like, make contact. Like, you need to reach out to your friend Melanie if she has JJ. And then you need to call the person on this card and let us know and put us in contact with her, or what have you. And she's like, yeah, of course, I'll do that. She's also told them now that Tylee has gone to school at BYU, just like up the road, but she's living at home. They go and they check, and she's not enrolled at BYU. BYU has no idea about this. They go back the next day. Gone. She's gone. Apartment's cleaned out. She's gone. So that's a big problem. Then they segue into Melanie Gibb, the secret recording that she did talking to Lori, where she says, why did you tell the police I had JJ? Like, you made me look weird. Like, a friend doesn't do that. Is JJ safe? And Lori's like, he is safe, and he's very happy, which is so creepy because we know he's dead. And we know that she knows that he's dead. And we know that she, Alex, and Chad, and maybe even Melanie all had a part in JD's death, as well as Tylee's. So that is where it kind of wraps up. Let me see if I'm missing anything else. Don't think so. I think that is the end. of this episode, yeah, they go to Lori's home. She's not there. The next day, somewhere around the next couple of days, they end up over in Chandler, Arizona, and they knock on Kelsey and Colby's door looking for JJ and Tylee, and they are like, nope. And then they start thinking, we haven't heard from Tylee. Like, this does not sound good. This is bad. Now nobody knows where JJ is. This is where Colby starts doing his YouTube videos, where he's reaching out to his mom. Now the kids are reported missing, and it's making national news. Everybody is talking about the story. And like I said, Justin comes in the beginning, so does Nate Newton. So they're like, and those of us that follow this case too, we're all kind of like knowing what happened up until this point. But the rest of the world, when it becomes national news, is trying to catch up. So Colby starts doing those YouTube pleas that he was doing for a while, like, hey mom, I love the kids so much, but I love you too, no matter what. And everybody can hate me for saying that, but I really don't care. He's like pleading with her. He's like, I love you because you're my mom. He says he was doing the videos because he was praying that Tylee was alive and she would see the videos and know that, you know, he was looking for her, that he loved her. Again, he had some guilt about spending all this time with Kelsey and his new daughter, which he shouldn't have. This wasn't his responsibility. Unless he thought I'm going to say this, unless he thought his mom was severely mentally ill and had no business taking care of children, and then that would have been the opportunity. But Colby does not express that, at least here. So I believe that is it. Okay, so this is how it ends. Zulema starts talking about, she says, I remember thinking in the back of my mind when they started talking about zombies, and she goes, and they started talking about Tammy, and then Tammy was dead, and then, you know, of course Charles was before, but I thought back about Charles being a zombie, and then Charles was dead, and she's like, and Chad is the one deciding who turns into zombies. And she has a conversation with Alex, and she's like, is there going to be any more zombies? Is there going to be any more people dying? And Alex says, no, that's it. There's nothing after this. And she says she started walking away, and he says something like, they're going to let me be their scapegoat, or fall guy, I think was the term that he used. And she's like, yeah, it's fall guy. And she's like, fall guy for what? Tell me. And she said, wait, what is it they're going, what are they going to pin on you? What did they do? And she said he just wouldn't say anything else. He wouldn't say anything else. It ends with the 911 call made by Zulema's son. Alex is dead on the floor. They show his death certificate. His cause of death is bilateral pulmonary complications with hypertensive cardiovascular disease, and his manner of death is natural. And then they show Janice on the screen, and she says, that runs in our family. So now we have Colby, and Colby's saying, at this point, I've talked to my grandparents. They tell me that Alex is dead. And I'm thinking, God, there's a lot of deaths. Like, Charles and my sister and brother are missing. Alex is dead. And he's had this big phone call with grandma who's breaking the news to him. And he comes home and there's an article written about Lori getting married to Chad. The wedding photos have been released and they're in the press. And this is how he finds out that his mom is remarried. He has no idea. He had no idea that Alex had been married. None of that. So he's just like, Janice says that she found out that Lori was married from Summer, Lori's sister, and Summer had seen it in the paper. And her response is, well, at least we didn't have to buy a present. So your grandchildren are missing. Her spouse is dead. Her new husband just lost his wife 2 weeks ago. And they've had a secret wedding out in Hawaii. She can't produce her children. And your response is, well, at least we didn't have to buy a gift. Oh, and 2, well, that won't be good for Tylee, because she won't want another stepfather. That won't be good. It just won't be good news. So towards the end, we see that footage where Nate Eden is chasing them through Kauai. The police are searching the rental car, and they ultimately give Lori a couple of days to show up in court and present proof of life for her children. We all know that she fails to do that. Colby is annoyed because Lori is out in Kauai having all these experiences with Chad that were his fun childhood memories, and she's sharing them with Chad. He says it's just not even like looking at his own mom anymore. And it ends with a lot of like national news coverage, like showing how the story blows up, and then Lori eventually being arrested and brought back to the mainland. So not a lot that's new. I'm interested, if anybody doesn't know this case, how choppy it seems. To me, it seems to be very choppy. I don't know how you could possibly follow it. This has nothing to do with the creators of the case, but even if this footage is like up to 2 years old, I don't know why Janice thought this was a good look for her. It's not to make little flippant comments. Now, we can do things with editing and stuff like that, but there's enough in there where you get the context of the conversation, and to say like, oh, my grandkids are missing, and I found out that my daughter had secretly been married in Hawaii to some guy that we don't know, and your response is like, oh, well, at least we didn't have to buy a gift. It's not cool. Gina, every time my husband irritates me, he becomes 3.5D. Yeah. Although D probably doesn't stand for dark, right? Master. Yes, the dungeon master. You guys are funny. Yeah. Chad did rate Lori's children. Yeah. Lori didn't rate them. Chad did. Chad created the rating system. Chad decided when people were zombies. Chad made those calls. Chad had a whole scenario going up in his mind, and when things got boring or things weren't working out, because he's not a prophet, so his prophecies did not work for him, because he would say on such and such a date this is going to happen, and it didn't, because the star-bellied Sneetches didn't have stars on their belly that day, and the Lorax called it quits, right? Like, those were always like the weird excuses. So when things didn't work out, he'd create a distraction, and he'd get a vision or a calling, and that is when he would say, oh my gosh, my wife, last night she turned into a demonic person named Viola, and it happened at 10 p.m. I remember, because my Apple Watch, like, my heart rate went off on the health thing, and I got a notification. It's beyond. It's unfathomable that people followed him and believed him. It wasn't just Lori, it was a lot of people. And I do say unfathomable, but then I think about other cult leaders and what people believe. Think about Heaven's Gate, which was smaller, but any cult, like it's insane. Um, check on your friends and loved ones. Seriously, if they're talking some nutty stuff about some new person they met, get an intervention and get them deprogrammed. By the way, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about Stockholm syndrome and starting to, identify with your captors, like defend them, and all that kind of stuff. Because we were talking about the hold that Chad had on people. I don't think he was literally holding anything over their heads. I just think he had this emotional hold on them, and they had a need they had a spiritual void, and he filled it, and he gave them what they wanted. He's so creepy. I don't know how, but most of these cult leaders are. And we were saying, what if you became, because we're playing kind of the what if game. So what if you became so invested and so indoctrinated into a religion that you really thought that these were the right things to do, and you've had like a mental break, you've had a break with reality, you have been programmed, you are still held accountable. And we can see a precedent in that with Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst she had Stockholm syndrome. She identified with her captors. She did bad things. She believed she was doing it in the name of a cause. That doesn't excuse the bad behavior. And I guess we just have to figure out where these people pop up and how they gain control over people to get them to believe such ludicrous things. I really don't understand. I know with this that because it was based off LDS religion and some things that are still in the LDS texts, that these were very devout people and they wanted to be spiritually superior. So they told themselves they were doing the work of God, but still insanity to me. I'm just talking. Oh, I turned my camera off. I always try to grow them out and then I end up cutting them. It's terrible. Oh, thank you, Persephone. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, she was a cuddle therapist. Kirk 72 says it's driving me crazy wondering what she died from, meaning Tammy. Yeah, me too. I want to know what her autopsy said, because we all know that Tammy was she did not have an initial autopsy. She was taken across state lines for burial, so she was embalmed right away. The coroner, who was young, just determined it natural causes and put in the ground, and then she was later exhumed, which is very interesting timing with Alex's death too. So Tammy's exhumed and Alex dies, and he's talking about being a scapegoat. Alex's death was determined to be natural. I keep hoping that somewhere along the line that will change too, and will, much like Tammy's and much like some other things that we've seen in this case, that they'll come back and say, we made a mistake, because I don't see Alex's death being natural. It's way too coincidental. I know I'm not alone in this, but way, way, way too coincidental, especially him being the one responsible for the shooting. So, I might have left this out, and I'm so sorry. There is a point in here where they show Brandon talking to the police. It's right after he's been shot at, and the police respond. And he describes the vehicle that shot at him. And it turns out that, he's like, it's a Jeep Cherokee or whatever. And it turns out later that they locate that car. And it is the car that was registered to Charles Vallow. Charles' dad. They don't tell us in this documentary, but we all know that later they have storage unit footage of Lori and Chad removing parts of the SUV or Jeep or whatever, so that it was slightly modified so somebody could shoot out the back. Brandon believed that it was Alex that shot at him. It's too much, you guys. It's all too much. A lot of missteps, it seems. Oh, Tuna, you're sweet. I feel like I'm a little off tonight, and I apologize. I feel like I'm kind of being a dud. I don't mean to be, because I was really excited to get on here tonight. I was. It's like I'm not delivering the way I want to, and I'm not really sure why. I do know this, though. Earlier this evening, somebody sent me an article, and I got really into it, and I think that probably wasn't the best choice for me. I think I need to stay focused on the matter of hand for the evening, because part of me is often in La La Land thinking about what I'm going to do with this other article, which is weird. By the way, speaking of like having visions, what have you? I want to know. Oh wait, let me read this first. Carolyn Dillman says, well, the Daybell kids said it was asphyxiation. Yeah. But we haven't heard, they also don't believe that their dad did any of this. So I don't know. And I understand that. I do. I understand that that's difficult to digest. They believe that their father's been framed. I have some, although I think that's crazy, I have some empathy for them because I'm not them. And I think Chad was a good dad to them. And so this is all very confusing and coming at them. And they were being attacked. You're not responsible. Like, just the way the documentary is titled, Sins of Our Mother, that's sins of their father. Those are not their sins. They don't inherit that evil. And they can still love their father. You can love the sinner, not the sin. But they seem to be in some denial, which would be natural. But they say it's asphyxiation. When I say we don't know, I like to deal in facts. I want to hear it from somebody. I want to see it on a document. I want to see what she died from. So, yep, she still says she talked to JJ on that date. Yeah, I can't imagine children being raised in a cult, Gina. Oh, I see what you were saying, Laura Bell. You said, so she was telling him stuff about her children. She didn't want them around, and he raided them after that. Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Maybe he gave her the excuse for them to die. Like, she, something that was left out of this, too, is that there's a time when Lori takes Tylee and runs off to Hawaii and leaves JJ with Charles for a very long time. He doesn't know where she is, right? And clearly she didn't want that responsibility. And Tylee was getting to the point where she was self-sufficient. So perhaps you're right in saying that. Chad gave her the excuse to get rid of her children. You have to get rid of them in the name of the mission. So he raided them dark, and they became zombies, and they had to go. There's no other option. As sick as it is. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay, so, speaking of visions, I don't know if you all saw my thumbnail tonight, but I'm really quite proud of it. Because it's Lori, so I didn't mean it to offend the LDS members, but I did mean to show Lori's utter disrespect to the LDS Church with all of the things that she was doing, saying she was doing it in the name of God, whether it's still in their text or not, breaking man's laws and taking God over man's laws, which is not what we're supposed to do, and standing in the temple in the baptismal area in her Mrs. Texas bikini. I thought it was pretty funny. I was kind of proud of it. Anyway, I think that's it for tonight. I am going to try to make this a little bit more interactive. I'm going to find another way to do this so we can wrap this up on Friday. And then I have started working on something else. So if I can hold up the schedule, if I can make it a habit, it hasn't been that bad. I think I can do this. I think I'm getting a little bit better with my anxiety. I got to work on the format a little bit, but I'll be back Friday. It will most likely be 9:45 because I work on Friday and I don't get home until like 8:30. So so I can kind of like have a little bit of downtime and prep for you guys, but we'll wrap up the last part of this. And then I'm also going to work in some of the things that, how do I say this? Like I said, if you're working off a timeline, everybody's going to have the same timeline basically, right? But I started listening to Mommy Doomsday again, and the way this Netflix series is done, it really just the pace and people they put in what places, it's weird. It's like they followed it and then just stuck in their own footage and made it visual. I really hope that one day they make Mommy Doomsday a visual experience, although I think it stands fine alone on its own as a podcast. But I think that could be very beneficial to people. And again, I'm going to drop that in the description, so if you don't know where to find it, that you can. And then the last thing I wanted to say is I literally had somebody who doesn't want their name mentioned, so I'm just going to say hi. I promised I'd do this. Reached out to me today via Facebook Messenger, and we had a really nice conversation, like just switching messages, and then we did an audio call and gave me some ideas about things that they would like discussed and they would like to talk about. And I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm so open to that. I really love when I get to have a personal connection with you guys. So if you have story ideas, if you don't want to have a conversation, that's fine. If you just want to drop me like a link, like, would you look at this? Or what do you think about this? Or can we talk about this? Please, please, please. You can do it in the comments of YouTube. You can do it via the True Crime Sushi Facebook page. I'm on Twitter. It's not True Crime Sushi on Twitter. It's at Crime Sushi. That's how you find me on Twitter. I just put that in the chat. And all of my social media links, too, are on the description page for YouTube or the About This channel thing on YouTube. Everything is there. So you can click right to it. But I absolutely love it. And I try to be really, really, I mean, like I'm so big. But I try to be really, really approachable because that's the kind of channel I always wanted this to be. The same way that we can have discussions and disagree. And I could be absolutely like not agreeing with your point, or you cannot agree with mine. I don't have a chat that's going to go after people. I'm not going to kick you off. The only way that ever happens is if it's like hate speech or something like that. Like it has to be something really disgusting and gross because we're all adults. And the only way we learn more about things and keep ourselves well-rounded and is having considerate, deep conversations. And I want to know you guys, and I want to know what you want, and I want this to be your place, your comfortable place, and your channel, and I do consider you all friends. So please, if there's something that you want covered or something like that, then let me know, and I will take care of it. Miss Peaches says, it's a great program and chat. We know your style, and that endears you to us. Oh, well, thank you. Oh, Carolyn, I've missed you too. I do. Gina, I do still follow the Tisha Stout case. Now, we all know that she is pulling the mental illness card. So that's difficult. But I will tell you, well, we won't go there tonight. But if you wanna start from day one on Stalk and recap it, I'll do that with you, all day long, and then we'll get up to date on where she is. Let's see. Gail, never apologize. You're here. It's always good to see you. Okay. Evelyn. I'm going to write that down. Actually, let me look for something really quick. Because Evelyn Dick, whoops, was a Canadian woman convicted of murder until her pardon in 1985. Her trials remain one of the most essentialized events in Canadian criminal history. Okay, well, thank you for reading that to my attention because, her death was overturned and she got life imprisonment and then she was paroled, huh? And she's 101? I've never heard of it. I'd love to cover that. Thank you. Writing it in my notebook. I'm not I'm a very transparent person. My sister, my mom, my husband, everybody teases me that I can't hide anything with my face because I just hit my elbow and it really effing hurt. Oh my gosh. Ow, ow, ow. I can't hide anything with my face. And so when I saw that typed in the comments, because I didn't recognize Jerry and Jenny C, and I so apologize. Thank you for being here. I thought I was being set up, like just to get me to say the word dick. Sorry. So I hesitated for a moment and I had to Google it. So, so what did you say? Nobody knows what happened to her after her parole, and they think she changed her name and moved away. That's interesting. That's like Carla Homolka, the Ken and Barbie, the Barbie part of the Ken and Barbie killers. She changed her name too, and so people are always looking for. Yeah, see, I can't not tell you that stuff. So that's who I am. But for a second, I was like, oh gosh, is somebody trolling me? But yeah. All right. Well, that seems, some of those ideas seem promising. And Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve. New Year's Rockin' Eve Ping. Yep. Like American Bandstand, right? Or for us 90s people, we remember the terrible Dance Party USAs. It was awful and embarrassing, and we probably wish it never happened. But thanks for dropping by, Ping. It's good. By the way, Ping and I have a channel. It's simply called Ping and Amy's Most Excellent Adventures in True Crime. Simply being sarcastic. We're talking about rebranding. But we do have a channel, and we are on every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30. And we like to call what we do over there True Crime Light. We do a little bit of everything. And if we get off on a tangent and it's fun and it's happening and it's working, we just stay there. But we still discuss true crime. Super fun. And we'd love for you guys to join us over there. We just started. We're trying to build up our subscribership, if that's a word, our subscription base, whatever. And it's a nice, relaxed, low-key kind of channel. And it would be great if I saw some of you over there too. So I will make sure that, see, he already did it. He dropped the link in the description. I'll put it up on the screen too. So you guys can see that. And thanks for dropping by. It's been great. I'll see you Friday at 9:45. It might be 10. I'm not going to lie to you. It's be between 9:45 and 10. We'll do episode 3. I'll try to get something better Then Lori standing in her bikini in a fountain in the baptismal pool in the temple. So on that note, good night, Sushi crew. It's been great. Thank you so much. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends. Give us a thumbs up. And I'll see you all on... Oops, no, I'm not. Hold on one second. I was going to say I'll see you all on the flip side, but I won't if I can't find the peace out button. All right. Good night, everybody.